You're listening to a weekly podcast made by Miami Dolphin fans for Miami Dolphin fans. Your source for entertaining Dolphin news, insight, and general conversation. Here's your host, Michael Fink.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. The Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. Well, it's Wednesday, and I've got Jim Johnson with me.
Hello, everybody.
And Louis Ragone.
Hi, Dolphins.
I want to throw a shout-out to Don Shula for his 90th birthday last weekend. Jim, what did Shula mean to you?
You know, I became a Dolphins fan when I was about 6 years old, watching Zonk just brutalize all the defenses, and Shula was on the sideline, and he had his jaw stuck out, and he was just he was it on the field. He was the guy. Growing up, you know, you're watching football, and he was always on the sideline, and it was like a big part of me growing up. He was like a constant right there through, you know, the Marino years, and he was just a big piece of my football life growing up, and I was very upset the way he got kind of railroaded out. But you know, Don Shula is one of my my favorite football people for sure.
Yeah, what about you, Louis?
Jim hit it on pretty good there in regard to growing up with him. I mean, Mike, me and you both grew up with him.
Yeah, I was 11 years old when I started watching him, and he left when I was 35.
Right, and I was 9, basically. So, you know, he was a constant. Whenever you looked over on that sideline every single week, you felt confident that we were going to win a football game. You knew your team was going to be prepared. Our team was going to be prepared. And that's what you loved about them, is that they never got on the field and shortchanged you in any way, shape, or form. The way he adapted to different players, you know, that were drafted, you know, when he went to a passing game in regard to Marino's era.
Yeah, I want to see Belichick get to a Super Bowl with David Woodley at quarterback.
Right, exactly.
We may find out in the future.
Mm-hmm. Killer Bees, Woodley, that era, you know, prior to Marino, and then what Jim talked about in regard to the running game and just great defense, and he was just phenomenal, and he did it the right way. You know, he did it. He had so much character, and just a great individual. God bless him. I mean, how old is he now? 90?
90, Louis.
I mean, incredible. He's outlived a lot of the players that were on that 72 team. You know, that's a sad thing.
That just tells you his strength.
Right, exactly. You know, a fighter. Again, you know, the team was always prepared to play football, and you always felt confident going into games that Dolphins were going to win. And that's what you take from him.
And even in his lean years, and there weren't many lean years, but you knew they'd be competitive. You knew you could turn on a football game and be able to enjoy it. And that's not to say they never got their butts kicked, because of course they did. But you knew most Sundays you were going to be on the right side of the scoreboard.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes they were just undermanned. They had some bad football teams, but they were always prepared. And that was the big thing with him. You know, he prepared for every situation, you know, leading up to a game. You know, a lot of the players have told us that. So great person as well.
Yes.
We've had the opportunity to meet him on several occasions, and he's just a great guy, very fan friendly. I can't say enough about him.
We met him, and I will tell you, he's probably the only person I've met that I was ever starstruck by. You know, he's just such an intimidating presence, you know.
Mm-hmm. When we used to go down to St. Thomas, they had security there. You know, this is going way back.
Yep.
And
Stuart Weinstein.
Yep, exactly. And we would kind of like just hover, you know, somewhere away from where the guys were, you know, the practice fields and stuff. And they would walk over to this cafeteria over at St. Thomas. And Shula was always one of the last ones to walk over. A lot of the players would come by. And, you know, we'd creep around, get some autographs, and Shula was always one of the last ones to come over. And he was always so gracious. You know, hey, fellas, how you doing? You know, you looking forward to the season? Oh, yeah, we're looking forward to it, Coach, you know. And he'd sign whatever we had, and he'd, okay, well, you all have a good day. And, you know, he'd walk off, and that was that. And he was just always great about it.
Yes. Had a lot of fun times down there at that training complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of fun times because you could get close to the players. You didn't have all the restrictions that you have today.
Yeah, right. It was like coming to one of our Sandlot football games. You could just walk up and just stand 10 yards away from the guys practicing. Yes. It was incredible.
Yes.
I was going to say you got to pay to watch practices now.
Yeah, well, I don't think they charge for them, Jim. But they're just not the same. You're sitting behind a fence and, you're not getting near the players unless they come to you. And it's different. It's just different.
Very much so. Very much.
Anyway, so let's talk Tua Tagovailoa.
Wow, you did a good job on that, Mike.
Yeah, I've been practicing.
Say that 3 times.
No.
Fast.
Well, I have a feeling we're going to be saying it a lot. But so Tua's declared for the draft, and everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. They either want him and think he's going to be the answer, or they're scared to death because of his injury history and his hip and all that nonsense. Where do you guys stand on it?
Well, I'm kind of in the middle on this. I've been following along, and you look at his play on the field before the injury, and you've got to love his skill sets. I mean, this guy can put a ball on a dime, knowing he's going to take a hit. He sees the field. He's a left-handed quarterback, which adds a kind of a new twitch for the defense to understand. So I like everything about this guy other than this injury. And I'm really torn about it because, that hip injury, it always used to be a career ender. And nowadays, guys are coming back from injuries they never came back from before. But we still don't know if he's going to be the same player. And that is a big concern. But the guy has this definite skill set that we need, the pocket presence and that it factor that we talk about a lot. So, we're going to put a lot of faith in what these doctors have to say in the next few months. Because it's only like 3.5 months till that draft is here. And, we're not going to see him, taking snaps and running laps and doing all the physical stuff to know what he's all about. So we're going to be relying on a lot of doctors' hearsay. So.
Well, the doctors seem to think he's going to make a full recovery. At least that's what they've said so far. Now, there's another criteria where they'll know better, and that's basically at the 3-month mark. So, that's still, another month away. So once that time comes, they'll have a better idea of his long-term prognosis. But I have a feeling he's going to be all right. I mean, just based on the things that I'm reading. Now, this is not a injury they can fool around with. It's a serious injury. He basically had the top of his leg go through his hip and out the other side. So it's a delicate surgery. They had to put it back into place right away, which they did. And by doing that, it prevented loss of blood flow to the area, which is really, really important because that's what cost Bo Jackson his career. He didn't get it set back right away, and there was some blood flow problems to that area, and it cost him, as I said, his career.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But, if he is healed and they feel he's healed and they feel that he's going to recover and be close to 100%, then I'd have no objection with the team taking a chance on him. We've blown first-round picks before. So, we've got 3 of them. I think they're in a position where they can gamble.
Yeah,
At least, that's my opinion. Lou, what do you think?
Well, the way I look at it is this. The quarterback position coming out of college is always a big question mark to begin with. You go back in history, we had a show on that, as a matter of fact, going back over the summer. And, the fact that it is such a big question mark to begin with, and then you throw this injury on top of that, I would much prefer that they go in a different direction.
Do you have a preference?
Well, we'll discuss that somewhere down the line, Mike.
Okay. Oh, come on, Lou.
No, that's fair.
The reason I'm saying that now, Jim, is because I want to do a little bit more preparation prior to coming out and discussing one individual. There's a couple I have in mind, but here's the thing. Okay. We have the luxury even if we, draft Tua. to where we have a guy like Fitzpatrick in place. I saw on the page this week that when you compare the quarterbacks in our division, that Fitzpatrick rated out better than all of them. So, you can look at that a lot of different ways. Now, with the luxury of having Fitzpatrick on the contract again next year, you don't necessarily have to have a guy as polished as, say, a Tua is coming out of the draft. You have the ability to get a guy where you want him to be over the course of next season. So, the injury just scares me way too much. The way quarterbacks play the game, and that is a big part of his game, moving around and whatnot. To me, it's just way too risky at that 5 pick. This is a real important situation and a real important time. And I think that you really have to hit on this pick. And, I think there's just too many question marks behind him. I would prefer that they go in a different direction, but, we'll see. I mean, they may not even be thinking about him. We just don't know. It's all speculative. They may like 3 guys above and beyond him, and we just don't know. We don't know who they like.
Well, I will say this. I'm sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
They have scouted Alabama 4 times this year.
Right.
Which is a big number. So they may, I think they do like him. The question is, have they changed their opinion since the injury?
Right.
So we'll see.
Have they talked about any of the other quarterbacks
that
have been
they've
scouted, Mike?
Some of the other ones, yes,
right.
But I don't know that they've scouted them to that degree.
To that extent. Okay.
Yeah, because they had the whole group out there,
Right.
So anyway, it is what it is. They do things sometimes to be deceptive too, so it's possible, they're scouting other players, and Tua is not their target. We'll see. So we wanted to go through the roster and talk amongst ourselves and see who we think they should keep and who we'd like to move away from. And we're going to start on the offensive line. And we have at center Daniel Kilgore. We have Evan Bain. We have Evan Brown. We have Keaton Sutherland. Of those guys, and some of these guys also play guard, obviously. Of those guys, do you think there's anyone there you'd like to see them keep?
To be honest with you, the only one that really serves any benefit right now is Kilgore. He's not a great center by any means, but he does have experience that
it's going to be his 10th year.
Yeah, he does have experience that not much of this line has. So I would be in favor of replacing Kilgore, but with the need along the line, I feel that Kilgore is probably going to be staying here another year at least.
Yeah, only for that reason, Jim.
Yeah.
If they go out and they do draft a center, which I think they should at some point, whether it be the 2nd or 3rd round, we have enough draft picks to I think that's something that they have to address. I've been saying it for a long time that across that offensive line, they have to get players. And I think it's our biggest need at this point. The guys that you mentioned, Mike, I don't really like any of them. Kilgore, only because he's been around for a while, like Jim said, maybe sticks again next season. I think he had a decent year, Mike. You would know better than me in regard to, how he rated out when all was said and done.
Some games were better than others,
Right.
Yeah.
But he was one of our better offensive linemen overall when all was said and done at the end of
But that's not saying much, Lewis.
But that's you took the words right out of my mouth, Mike. Thank you. Yes, it's not saying a lot across our offensive line. So, listen, guys, we know what our weakness is on this football team. We can't run the football. We did an adequate job of pass blocking. I think Fitzpatrick had a lot to do with making them look a hell of a lot better than what they actually were. So across that line, we have to address the situation. And, if all the guys mentioned are gone, I'm not going to cry over it. I can tell you that.
I got a few more here. How about
Okay.
You did mention Evan Boehm, I think, and
yes.
He's a guy that I think may stick around just for his added depth. He's probably not going to be a guy you want to start, but I think he probably sticks around.
I kind of agree with you, but we'll see.
Yep.
Shaq Calhoun, Michael Dieter, and Jesse Davis.
Well, Davis and Dieter are going to be here, Mike. Davis is under contract, and Dieter's a rookie. You hope that he improves. I think that if we don't see improvement next year, you may not see him around much longer thereafter. So, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, which we've said on numerous occasions. As far as Davis goes, I think that eventually, and we've talked about this as well, they may move him inside to maybe that right guard position and get him off that tackle position, and maybe
which would be my preference,
right? Which would benefit him and probably the team as well. So those two guys are going to be here. Jim mentioned, for depth purposes alone, you have to have a few guys come back. I mean, you can't replace 10 guys across the line of scrimmage in one season. So those guys will definitely be back. And, I think that they're capable, and
I think Calhoun has a shot to be back as well as a developmental guy.
Right. Yeah, that was my next thing I was going to add to what I agree with what you were saying, Lou. But I think Calhoun has a legit shot because he was, he kind of came out of nowhere, and they're still molding these guys. And a lot of the offensive linemen take 2 or 3 years to become, really good. And we're going to have a new offensive line coach and on and on. So, Calhoun probably sticks just because he knows what's going on and they're familiar with him.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got 3 more guys to mention. These are tackles: Julian Davenport, Adam Penke, and Jamarcus Webb. And I think all 3 of them are garbage, but that's just my opinion.
Kaka.
Yeah,
Kaka.
Yeah, I'd rather see Davis be a guard / tackle, and we bring in new guys.
Yeah, those guys are nope, Michael.
And we have Chidi Okiki on injured reserve. He's a tackle. And that's about it. So, Danny Isadora also. He's on the injured reserve list. He's a guard. I didn't see much of him, but I don't think he played a whole lot.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't see enough of either one of those guys to really have much of an opinion.
Yeah, he was rotating in and out, Mike, before he got injured.
Right.
I think he was replacing both guards at times. And, again, we didn't see enough of him. So it's hard to really comment on him.
Yeah. On the defense, we got cornerback Tay Hayes, Nick Needham, Eric Rowe, Lyndon Stevens, Jamal Wiltz, Nate Brooks, and one more, Stephen Parker. So of those guys, and I'll read them again real quick, Tay Hayes, Nick Needham, Eric Rowe, Lyndon Stevens, Jamal Wiltz, Nate Brooks, and Stephen Parker. Any of those guys you think you'd like to see back?
Well, obviously, I'd like to see Rowe come back. I think they've already signed him.
Yeah.
He's
listed as cornerback, but he was playing safety.
He was playing safety, and he transitioned to that pretty well. Nick Needham, we all thought he was the worst player in the NFL in preseason, and he developed very well, so I'd like to see him back. And Jamal Wiltz, while he has some holes in his game, I think he was a good addition to the team. So I'd like to see them at least get a shot at, that final 53. As far as the other guys, Hayes, I didn't see much of. Parker.
You didn't see much of Hayes because he wasn't giving up much. He actually did pretty good.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to scope it out then.
Yeah, Hayes and Parker. Parker, I know, had a couple of interceptions. I remember him having 2 picks. And, again, you need a lot of depth in your secondary. So maybe
Can't
these
have
guys.
enough good cornerbacks, right?
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Maybe these guys aren't starters, but, depth wise, I think they'd be adequate. And they maybe. Needham's definitely going to be part of the team. I mean, there's no question about that. I wouldn't be shocked if he's our starting cornerback opposite Xavier Howard next year. I thought he played really well on occasion. I mean, he had some tough assignments, and for a guy that was a walk-on free agent, he played exceptionally well. So you'll see him back. Wiltz is kind of, he seems to look good at times, and then other times he looks horrible. So it's kind of tough with him, to gauge him. But these are all young guys.
He's only played 1 year, right? He's 25 years old. So
these are all young guys. I mean, some of the guys that we're talking about right now, some of these guys are going to definitely be on the team. I mean, Jim already hit on Rowe. He's here, whether it be at safety or corner or both, next season. I think he surprised all of us with his play for the most part, when he got moved over to safety. I mean, give the coaches credit. They made another great move back there. They recognize things, and it reminds you of the type of things that Belichick does with the Patriot players. He moves guys around, puts them in different positions to where they're successful in doing that. And that's exactly what happened with Rowe this past season. So, I liked some of the names there, Mike, more so than a lot of other positions in the offensive line.
Yes.
I think some of these guys are definitely going to be on this team next year without a question of a doubt.
Well, on injured reserve, at the end of the year, you had Xavier Howard. Obviously, he's going to be your starter unless these legal things demand otherwise.
Right, suspension.
Yep. Rashad Jones at safety, I don't think we're going to see Rashad back.
Do we save money, Mike, by releasing him next season, or are we in the same? Or are we in the same?
No, they're going to save money by releasing him next season.
So,
I don't have the figure in front of me, but I think it's close to $8 or $9 million.
Okay.
Ryan Lewis, cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby McCain now, and Bobby, was at safety. Did they move him back to corner?
I think his days are over as a corner. I think they solidify. Yeah. I think they solidified that last year by moving him over to safety. And, again, you need two safeties back there. So, maybe Rowe and McCain are your guys. We'll see how they approach it.
And there's also Ken Webster.
Mm.
Yeah, Webster can go. Rashad has seen his last day, game in a Dolphins jersey. Lewis,
One more name, Jim. Cordrea Tankersley. He was on the physically unable to perform list.
Right. And Tankersley was a guy we thought was going to take that number 2 spot, and it never happened.
Never happened.
So
when did he get hurt?
Early on.
It was fairly early, yeah.
Very early. Wasn't it in preseason? Did he even start the year?
I don't think we saw him play.
I don't think so either. I think he got hurt in the preseason. So, depending on what the injury was, he's a guy that, maybe comes back and plays to what we expected out of him a couple of years back. This is going to be, his third season, Mike, next year?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Whether he's going to be 100% healthy and ready to go next year, that's a crapshoot, I think.
I mean, most of these young cornerbacks fit into a box. They played well at times, and at other times they struggled.
Yep.
So it's a matter of if they can progress their games. I wouldn't be firm in saying any of them are not going to be back, or they will be back. I think it's really tough to call.
Mm-hmm.
At defensive end, you have Taco Charlton, Charles Harris, and Avery Moss. If you were trying to sell these guys at the swap shop, I don't think you'd get rid of them for 50 cents.
Harris has just been a big letdown from the get-go. Just not making any impact on games at all. And, Taco Charlton came in and he looked promising. In the first few games, he had a few sacks and we were like, yeah, but then he just kind of disappeared. And another problem with these defensive ends is, they can't contain at all.
That big problem.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem for us. So, as far as I'm concerned, they can all go away.
Agreed. I don't really want to spend any time on these guys at all because right behind the offensive line,
neither will the Dolphins.
The defensive end position is just, it's just atrocious. I mean, the amount of sacks. I mean, Charles Harris had a half a sack this year.
It must have been a mistake.
I was going to say, he must have fallen down on the play or something.
Right. He started 5 games. And if you can't start on this football team with the depth that we have at defensive end, and, that's a problem. I mean, Avery Moss, Mike, maybe he comes back for depth. The other 2 guys I don't think are here next year. Avery Moss, maybe. Again, he had no sacks this year. He did play in 8 out of the 11 games he was around for. So he did start, I should say, 8 of the 11 games. So he was starting over the other 2 guys that we've been talking about. And he was actually a little bit more productive. But if they all went, again,
you wouldn't miss them.
I wouldn't shed a tear.
He's another marginal player.
Now, at defensive tackle, I mean, the absolute reverse needs to be said. I think all these guys come back. Devon Godchow, John Jenkins, Zach Seiler, and Christian Wilkins, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I'd agree with you. I mean, Wilkins isn't going anywhere, and neither is Godchow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they all played solid in the middle. The middle wasn't our weakness. It was the defensive end positions that were just brutal.
Yeah, you have Jonathan Ledbetter, who was a defensive end. He ended up on injured reserve.
Right.
And Gerald Willis, defensive tackle, ended up on injured reserve.
Right.
Got not much to say about either one of those guys, so we'll see what happens with them. What'd you think of Chandler Cox at fullback?
Didn't say him, Mike. Not enough of them.
Not enough of them. I agree.
He had a few really good plays. There was a short yardage touchdown score, and it worked. It worked perfect. Chandler went in there and made the lead block, and it was a touchdown. But we just didn't see it utilized enough. They struggled with the running game so much. I think they kind of abandoned ship with having two bodies on the field dedicated to the running game, and they shifted to having Fitzpatrick slinging it to as many wide receivers as they could get out there.
Right. I mean, just the fact that he wasn't on the field a lot, it tells you something about where he was. And, again, he's a rookie. They decided to go with a lot of double tight end formations with Gesicki on the field, who's, as we all know, he's not a great run blocker by no means. So if you are going to run the football, maybe a better situation is, in fact, having a fullback in. And they decided against that. So it tells you a little bit about what their thoughts are on Cox. The fact that, I thought they were going to utilize him more so in the passing game, maybe throwing the ball, because San Francisco and some of these other teams in the league throw to their fullbacks. And right. The guys are always wide open because nobody covers these guys. And that's what I was expecting more of from him. Maybe even getting some runs on third and shorts, the third and short, those fourth and, a yard, a half a yard, those type of situations. And I don't know if he had a carry this year. And I don't think he had a pass reception this year. So it's really hard to judge this guy, with the amount of playing time he had. And there's an obvious reason as to why he wasn't on the field as much, even in certain situations, because, they were in situations inside the 10-yard line to where he should have been more utilized and he wasn't. So there's got to be a reason behind that.
And
right.
This is kind of off topic, but, this could be one of the reasons that Chad O'Shea was relieved of his duties. So maybe it's a different mindset to what Flores wants to do. But, I like the fullback idea, and I thought Cox did fairly well in his opportunities. I think I did see him drop one pass that went his way, but he just didn't get much opportunity.
Right.
Hey guys, I wanted to break in here real quick just to ask a favor of you. On the app that you're listening on, if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the podcast. Hit like, leave a comment on your thoughts of the show. And if you didn't know, we do run a Facebook group. It's Miami Dolphins #1. That's #1. We talk Dolphins football 24/7, 365. We'd love to have you join us and share your thoughts. And once again, we want to thank you for listening. Let's make it a habit. We'll see you next week. All right, so at linebacker, we've got Jerome Baker. We've got Vince Beagle. We've got Jamal Davis, Sam Ekwebon, Trent Harris, Deion Lacey, Calvin Munson, Andrew Van Ginkel. Now, of those guys, is there anyone you don't see coming back?
Don't see coming back.
Right. I didn't see enough of Jamal Davis to say one way or the other.
Yeah, Davis and Hayes probably won't be back, I don't think. Ekwebon is kind of the loose cannon guy there. He had some good games and then some pretty poor games. So it's kind of.
I thought he started really slow, but I thought he picked up a little bit as the second half of the season went along.
I did as well, and he had some games that were quite good. But to me, there's only so many guys that are going to make it in here, and Van Ginkel is going to be a lock. You've got McMillan that's coming back off of IR. I believe he gets a spot. and Baker is your main backer back there. And Vince Beagle, I think, should get another contract. He was a bright spot. They brought him in and he played well. So
yeah, Equivon is interesting. He had 3.5 sacks, which, believe it or not, was second on the team behind Taco.
Uh-huh.
And he had 9 quarterback hits, which was second only to Beagle, who you just talked about. So he did come on in the second half of the season. I think he's here. If he doesn't start, he's here for depth. And, he's 26 years old. He's not an old guy. So I think you see most of those guys mentioned, Mike, all coming back. Baker's got to have a better season than what he did. He did lead the team in tackles. He had 1.5 sacks the whole season. I thought we were going to see a little bit more of him blitzing and getting to the quarterback. It didn't develop.
Right.
He had good games, and then he had some really poor games. So he's got to get a lot more consistent, and he's got to be the key to our linebacking crew. He has to be. I mean, I'm sure you guys agree with me on that. He has to be the guy that steps up and becomes like a leader on that defense. And I didn't see it this year out of him. Now, we're talking about him coming back. Obviously, he'll be back. McMillan, like you said, those guys will all be there. Van Ginkel, I felt, had a really strong game near the end there. I think it was the very last game of the year. It all bleeds together at some point. What game did he have a real solid game, Mike? I think it was the New England game, right? Or was it the week prior against Cincinnati?
Before that, I think it was against the Bengals.
It was against the Bengals. Okay. I knew it was one of the last few games where he seemed to play well. And, we didn't see enough of him because he missed so much of the year and then he was kind of thrown into the mix. But like Jim said, I think he's going to be a solid contributor next year as well, whether it be starting or in situational play. So, I think most of the linebackers come back. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't mind them drafting somebody that's just a beast out there, because we haven't seen any of those guys play in that situation. So
right, there's a couple of other guys that they signed a reserve future contract with. That's Jake Carlock. We don't know much about him. Terrell Hanks we saw play a little bit in the preseason, and a couple of guys on injured reserve. James Crawford, McMillan, obviously. It's not a very inspiring group. I definitely think they could add, a quality pass rushing linebacker to that group. I think that probably should be one of their priorities this offseason. That's if they're going to play, at 3-4. How do you guys feel? I assume you feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
I was excited to see Van Ginkel get with the program when we drafted him for that pass rushing linebacker. But with his injury and being on IR most of the season, we didn't really get to see him learn the NFL per se and blossom. But, he could turn into a stud for us next year. But exactly like you say, Mike, overall, it's kind of an average group of guys. So, it'd be nice to add some star power to that unit.
McMillan had some decent moments. Baker had some decent moments. Neither one of them, I thought, were consistent. I'd say the same thing about, Equivon. He seemed to get better as the season went on, but I don't think he was anything special. And as far as some of these other guys like Dion Lacey, obviously we don't know much about him, or Calvin Munson, so it's hard to say. But anyway, so that's it. Tabor Pepper is a long snapper. I thought did a good job. We didn't have any real bad long snaps, so props to him. And what about the punter?
You've got to have a solid punter, and he needs to be consistent. And, the field position game can be critical. We had a lot of close games, and when you pin them deep, that helps. And if you shank a punt, that's terrible. So I'm not too concerned either way. I think they probably bring him back. But, the punter isn't high on my list of priorities right now.
I don't know. I think a punter is pretty important, to be honest with you. Especially, pinning teams down inside the 10, and they can really change field position. And when you have a suspect defense, that helps.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind another Reggie Roby.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody with a leg that's consistent. But anyway, quarterback, Obviously, Josh Rosen is going to be back. Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be back. There really isn't much to talk about there. We know their priority is to find a franchise quarterback. So whether that happens this year or not, we'll see.
Well, we all know that Lou wants Rosen to start.
Fitzy, if he stays here and does what he does, or does what he did this past year, I'm fine with that. I love the way he played the game this year. And Rosen, I would love to see them move him and try to get a draft pick back for him if that's possible. Because once we draft another quarterback, which is inevitable, he just becomes he's not a valuable piece to the puzzle at all. I think Fitzpatrick will be fine doing what he's going to do. And, are you going to carry 3 quarterbacks next year? I don't know. I mean, can you do that?
If Tua is the quarterback, I think you have to.
Yeah, you do.
If Tua is, yes. But, I mean, if he's not, are we carrying 3 quarterbacks? Do we have that luxury? I don't know. I really don't. Not with the way the NFL is nowadays. So
they just signed Rudock again, I think, to some.
I was going to say that, but that we can assume that's for training camp purposes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. We can do that, but then again, the writing could be on the wall for Rosen. Maybe they
if they like him as much as you do, he's gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's as simple as that.
There's not a need for him on this football team. Let's just say it. I'll say that and then just leave it at that. How's that?
I don't think anybody's going to argue with you.
All right.
Jason Sanders, kicker.
I love him. Yeah. I mean, he was a little inconsistent, but
he was pretty solid. We need to bring him back.
He's got a leg, and he can kick those long field goals, and distance is not an issue. I mean, he was just off. Even when he was missing on those long field goals, I mean, they were good. They would have been good from 60 yards out. He was just off a little bit, left to right, whatever the case may be. I love him.
That seemed to be league wide.
Yes, you look around the league, and it was an issue all the way across the board. Missed extra points over and over again.
It's not the chip shot it used to be.
No, it's not. But they shouldn't be missing 30-yard field goals as consistently as they are. And, I mean, they're extra points now, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Just a little more pressure on the extra point, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Running back, Patrick Laird. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Perrine, and his first name, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Samaji, I don't know. Delance Turner. We don't know much of the last 2 guys.
Well, Perrine came over from the Redskins, and he had some experience with them. He's not a bad running back, but, I mean, he's not going to be here, and
right.
Neither is the other fellow you mentioned.
What about Balaj and Gaskin?
He's
our 7th-round draft pick from last year.
Right. We didn't see enough of him. But, Mike, all these guys, I mean, I like Laird. And I know, Jim, I know you like him. And Mike, I know you like him. He's a solid player. He dropped a few passes here and there near the end of the year. Prior to that, he was spot on anytime the ball was thrown to him. He doesn't have any lanes to run through, so you can't really evaluate him in regard to him being capable of running the football because there were just no holes to run through. Balaj, I think we saw enough of him to know what he is. I mean, they need to upgrade. I mean, they need
lacks vision and toughness.
Right, and he can't catch the football either. Yeah. They need an upgrade. They need 2. As far as I'm concerned, they need 2 running backs, and I'd love to see them sign a veteran, no matter who it is. Much like they did with Gore that year, and possibly draft a young guy, and get some type of running backs that are capable of making plays on this football team because the guys you mentioned are, they're below adequate.
Yeah, and we need a running back that's an all-around player. He's got to be able to catch the ball, rush the ball, block. He's got to cover the bases. With Balaj, he couldn't catch a football if it was covered in Velcro. He really struggled in the passing game. just, no elusiveness. And if there wasn't a big hole, he was done.
He was done.
Yeah, it's just no sidestepping, no making something out of nothing at all. It was painful at times. Laird and Gaskin, these are decent backs that have some capabilities, but they're not the stud running back that you would want, behind the quarterback.
Well, they're not a bell cow back, but
yeah,
they're a situational back.
Yep.
Walt Aikens, Adrian Colbert, Montre Heritage. Who else we got at safety?
McCain.
Rashad Jones we talked about, right?
I think we talked about a good amount of these guys already, Mike.
Well, Aikens we touched on earlier because he's a free agent, but he's been with the team. He's like one of our veterans now.
Well, his value has been special teams.
Yeah, he's a special team captain type of thing, and if his price tag isn't too high, I'd bring him back. He's been a good core player for us.
Agreed.
All right, what'd you think of the tight ends? Gesicki, Durham Smythe, Clive Walford.
Well, Walford, I don't think he'll be back. Gesicki, we all know how he played second half of the season. He was very, very good. Smythe, I don't know. Him and Balaj, Mike, two big disappointments in my eyes. You figured them to progress this year, and they didn't. Right. I don't think they did any more than what they did in their rookie year. If not, they regressed. They went backwards, in my opinion, both of those guys. Can we use another tight end? I think so. I think we can sign a veteran and have him play opposite Gesicki in situations, and that'd be a major plus for us, a guy that can block. And I think that's what they were trying to do.
Yes.
When they signed, his name, I can't come up with his name.
Oh, the expatriate?
The expatriate, the ex-Colt. Lord have mercy, I can't think of his name. But anyway, that's what I think they were trying to do last year, and I think that they'll probably go down that same road this year in regard to getting a veteran guy to play opposite that can actually block and can actually catch the ball when called upon to do so.
Well, they have Chris Merrick, who we saw a little bit in preseason. He was on the practice squad. They've still got his rights.
Yeah, I'd give Smythe another go round, and of course Gesicki and Walford needs to hit the road.
Okay, wide receiver: Trevor Davis, Isaiah Ford, Mac Hollins, Alan Hearns, Devontae Parker, Albert Wilson. Who's not coming back?
Well, Mike, we've talked about Wilson, and we have somewhat different opinions, right? You're under the impression that he might not be back next year, and I think he's definitely coming back.
I do think he's coming back. I know I said you're right. I did say I didn't think so.
Right.
But he has that was in the middle of the season. I said that, and I thought he played much better the second half of the season. And if he looked like he regained his quickness, and if he's got his quickness, and he'll be 6 months further along, then right. I do think there's a good chance that he'll be back to himself, and they may decide to keep him.
Yeah, obviously Parker balled out this year, and he's got his contract. Wilson, I was like you, Mike. I was like, yeah, he's just not what he used to be, and let's move on. But the last few games, he made a lot of key receptions and looked good. So. Hearns is the guy that I don't know.
They just gave him a contract, so I gotta think he's going to be back.
I know, but I'm just kind of on the fence about it. Isaiah Ford made some great catches, so what
a surprise he was.
Yeah, at the end, that was really I think he caught 4 first down receptions that were like third down plays. They were big plays, and that was great to see. And then you've got Preston Williams and Mighty Mouse that are on IR coming back too. So, we've got 6 guys right there: Ford, Hearns, Wilson, Preston Williams, Grant, and Parker. So, we're pretty deep at wide receiver right now. So I don't know what's going to change right there.
There's also Ricardo Lewis and Gary Jennings and a few others.
Yeah.
They signed another couple to futures contracts. So I'm sure some of that they do for training camp, so they just have the rights to bring these guys back.
Yeah, true.
But of the group, the main group, I do think it's probably our strongest position outside of defensive tackle. The surprise to me, obviously, was Isaiah Ford, because he'd been around a few years. He's not a rookie.
Exactly.
We kind of thought we knew what he was, and maybe we didn't. So I'm curious to see more of him.
Yes. When you talked about Hearns, Jim, when they signed him to that contract, the first thing I told Mike was, God, why did they do that so quickly? We haven't seen enough of this guy to warrant him getting that type of contract. And he had some really poor games. The Buffalo game, he turned that whole game around on that fumble where he wasn't even hit. And if you think about it, down the stretch, once we lost Preston Williams, it was Isaiah Ford and it was Albert Wilson that stepped up in his absence, in Williams' absence. And Hearns, you just didn't see much out of after that.
Hearns is a guy that they said functions really well against the zone defense. He knows how to find the soft spots in the zone. He's very good at that.
Well, he needs to do a little bit more of what you're saying he does well, Mike, because I didn't see it. I just didn't see it.
No, I hear you.
I'm
not defending him. I'm just telling you why they re-signed him.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I mentioned Hearns, because I'm not sold on the guy. We've seen all these other receivers make some spectacular plays, and Hearns has just been like meh. So
yeah.
And he's 28, Jim.
Yep.
He's not a young guy.
Right.
He's a guy that's now here over the next couple of years. We've got him signed until the age of 30. And is he a necessity on this team? I don't know. I would have much preferred they get another young guy in here. I think Ford would have been fine. He proved that down the stretch, and I think they jumped the gun a little bit by signing him to that 2-year contract. So we'll see.
Time will tell. Yep.
Time will tell. Maybe he'll become a big, important part in regard, like you said, Mike, to a possession-type receiver that moves the chains next season. Maybe that's what their thought process is with him. So we'll see.
Well, maybe he had trouble learning the offense like a lot of other people apparently did. There was an article today saying that that was a lot of the reason they let O'Shea go. Guys were just having trouble, and they felt like the New England offense was too complicated for a young team. So we'll see where that goes. All right. We probably should run by the playoff games real quick. Who do you guys like in the Vikings-San Francisco game?
I'm going to have to go with San Francisco myself.
Geez, go out on a limb, why don't you?
Yeah, well, that's just how I feel. So I don't think that the Vikes are going to be able to pull off another upset.
What's the spread in that one? Do we know?
I don't have it in front of me. Last I heard it was 9, but I think it went down.
Wow, 9. I'll take Minnesota and 9. Here's the thing. San Francisco, down the stretch, the second half of the season, really did not play as well as they did in the first half. And Minnesota went into New Orleans and won, so I wouldn't be shocked if they go in and beat San Francisco this week. I just wouldn't be. I think they're capable of doing it. Dalvin Cook,
7 points.
7-point spread. That's a big number. I think that San Francisco's defense is a much better defense than New Orleans' defense is, but their offense isn't as good. So with that being said, I think we see another tight game this week, and I think it'll go either way. I really do. But San Francisco's at home, so I'll go with San Francisco, but in a really, really close game. And like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota upsets them. I really wouldn't.
Okay. What about the Titans and Ravens?
Jim? Go ahead, Lou.
All right, you want me to start this one?
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this one.
It's a 9.5 point spread before you ask me.
I think the world would be in shock if Tennessee goes in and beats Baltimore. They're the Super Bowl. They're the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year for good reason. They play great football on both sides, and Tennessee just doesn't have enough. all you got to do is stop Derrick Henry, and you've got their offense solved. So, with that being said, I think Baltimore beats them by at least a couple of touchdowns. I don't think this game's going to be close.
Yeah, I would have to go with Baltimore, and I think I'd give them the points and everything. Even if Derrick Henry goes off and has success running the ball, I still think Baltimore is going to score more points than what Derrick Henry can. So I gotta give the nod to Baltimore.
Texans at the Chiefs.
Texans at the Chiefs. Kansas City.
Another 9.5 point spread.
Kansas City's favored by 9.5. Now, I would take Houston and the points in that, but I don't think Kansas City's defense is capable of, keeping Houston off the board. Now, with that being said, I don't see Houston's defense stopping Kansas City. So Houston better hope that the weather's not great and there's something other than just the fact that their defense is going to slow Kansas City's offense down, because they're not going to do it. I think Kansas City is going to win the football game, and I think they're going to beat them, by maybe a touchdown. I think there'll be points scored in this game, 35-28, something like that, something to that extent.
Yeah, Houston's got J.J. Watt coming back, and that's great, but I can just see Mahomes, throwing the touchdown pass through his arms. So I just don't see Houston being able to do enough defensively to slow that Kansas City offense down, and they are starting to click better than they were earlier in the year. I think it's going to go mostly Kansas City's direction.
Yeah, Houston's lack of a running game kind of hurts them as well. I mean, if they had a little bit better running game to balance their offense out a little bit, I think they'd be a better football team than what they are. They just don't have a guy that really scares you, out of the backfield in any way, shape, or form. So, and Damian Williams, our old player, seems to be coming on very strong late in the year. So,
Yep.
Kansas City's just got so many weapons to worry about. I mean, Kelsey and, Tyreek Hill, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, that's a tough offense to slow down. So, yeah,
that Holmes Field Stadium is a big advantage there too.
Yep, absolutely.
We got the Seahawks going to Green Bay as 4-point underdogs.
Jimbo?
This is a tough game for me to call. Russell Wilson usually puts up a good fight. But all things considered, Green Bay's running game has been much improved, and that takes the pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. I think Green Bay being at home, they're going to do just enough. I think Green Bay is going to expose Seattle's defense and secondary a little bit, and, Green Bay is probably going to win by about 10 or 12.
Okay. All right. So you think they're going to beat them up pretty good then?
I think Seattle's going to make enough mistakes on defense, and Aaron Rodgers is in the playoffs at home, and he'll most likely have a good game, which means some broken plays that go for 6.
I think Green Bay is the better team collectively on both sides of the football. I think Seattle has some holes in their defense, and Green Bay on offense, they don't have to depend on Rodgers, but it's great to have him in your back pocket. Their running game, like you said, has been great this year. And, Seattle's been hurt. If they were completely healthy, I mean, the Marshawn Lynch thing is a great story and whatnot. I said this last week, but he's not Chris Carson and he's not Rashad Penny. Those two guys combined are outstanding running backs. They're young running backs. And they do a great job. And without them, Seattle's offense is going to be hurt by it. They're going to have to rely on Wilson, I think, a little too much. And I agree with you. I think Green Bay is going to win this game. I don't think they're going to win by as much as you think they are. I think they'll beat them by maybe a touchdown, maybe 10 points. But I like Green Bay in this one, too. I think they're a very solid football team.
So you guys both picked all the home teams, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we did. I'm a little iffy about that San Francisco-Minnesota game. I think they're just going to edge them out, but yes.
Yeah, well, so do I. I kind of think the Vikings will keep that game close, at least for a half.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle and Green Bay is the intriguing game to me. That's the one I'm probably most looking forward to watching.
Okay.
You got Wilson, you got Rodgers. What could be better?
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we have our old friend Ryan Tannehill going against the Ravens defense. Can he do it? That's a big question. We'll see the answer on Sunday. So, yeah, it should be a fun weekend.
What's your least favorite game on the board here, guys? Mike said that's his favorite one, the Green Bay-Seattle one. What's
Texans-Chiefs doesn't really excite me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Baltimore-Tennessee game, I think, is just going to be over by halftime.
Yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued because I want to see what Tannehill does and what the Titans do. Can they compete with the Ravens? I'm curious to see that. I also think.
You want me to answer that for you, Mike?
No. I want them to answer it because, I would not mind seeing the Titans win that game, to be honest with you. Don't think they will, but I wouldn't mind seeing it.
Right. All right. Well, good luck with that, Mike. And
no, I didn't say I predicted that now, so I don't need much luck.
There you go.
So, anyway, we all like the home teams, and rightfully so. I mean, look, the spreads are all big except for the Seattle game, so we're not the only ones. Mm-hmm. It just, it's one of those weeks where they appear to be better teams. And the thing is, in the playoffs, sometimes a fumble, a little momentum, and all of a sudden the underdog wins. So we'll see what happens. Guys, thanks for joining me this evening.
Yeah. Pleasure as usual.
Yep.
And, fun time as always, Mike. When are we coming back? Next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
All right.
And until then, fins up.
Fins up, everybody.
Fins up, Dolphins.
All right, so that's our show for this week. I just want to remind everyone that the Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.